Convincing victory then for Pakistan. They stay alive in this T20 World Cup, and that is wonderful news for the team, for the fans. And of course, after playing a game like they did, it's just magnificent. South Africa, maybe not as much at stake in terms of the points that they needed, but still, could this be a dent in their confidence as they try and march forth to be the second or one of two teams that make it from that particular group? But for now, let's dwell on Pakistan's victory. They put the runs on the board, and then they were excellent with the ball. Little help from the rain. That meant that South Africa had a stiff target after they came back post the rain break. 108 for 9 in 14 overs. 33 more runs is what they required in just 14 overs. And after they lost those 2 wickets in 1 over to Shadab Khan, everything changed, including the Duckworth-Lewis turn equation. Temba Bavuma, Aiden Markram were the 2 standout batters, and they both fell in the same over. That changed the equation completely. Here on Cricbuzz Live, got Joy Bhattacharjya alongside and Harsha Bhogle. Joy, that was convincing from Pakistan, and they needed it, and how?
Yeah, and I think Harsha has put out in the group something which, sort of symbolizes this tournament for me. That South Africa were the last unbeaten team in this tournament, and they losing means this is a tournament of equals. Everyone turns up on one particular day. First and foremost, all your associate nations or non-test playing countries have punched above their weight, beaten teams, given teams scares. Now, there's not a single team that is reigning on top saying, nobody else is good enough as me. And I think in one way that makes for an absolutely fantastic tournament, because it means things are wide open. There aren't any favorites, and favorites are changing as the tournament is going through. And that's fantastic for the tournament.
Yes, Harsha, of course, the batters set it up with the runs that they put, but you'd have to say that the bowling lineup of Pakistan outdid the bowling lineup of South Africa.
On the day, yes. Those first 2 wickets that they took, but I still think South Africa were on course. It was that 8th over that upset South Africa's plan completely. The 8th over from Shadab, in which he picked up 2 wickets. Markram was set. He was looking good. That wicket of Markram especially. And Temba Bavuma. So Bavuma and Markram, they were both set. They were moving along at a good pace. I think that was the over that changed it. So Shadab actually changed the game twice. Once with the bat and second time with the ball. He's some all-rounder. He's one of the best T20 players in the world at the moment. I'm glad to see him play like this. Some of us have been saying it for the last couple of years. Add to the fact that he's probably Pakistan's best fielder. So that is an extraordinary grouping of talents. So yeah, what I liked about Pakistan, Gautam, was they could easily have gone into this with a martyr syndrome, saying, things went against us in the game against Zimbabwe. Who knows what could have happened? Oh, that Kohli innings. Oh, that no ball call. You can sometimes get lost in your own misery. And if you get lost in your misery, it ensures that it loses you the next game as well. But they forgot all that and they came out positive. And there's a great lesson for everybody. There's a great lesson for their fans and supporters and media and for everybody else in the game, that you put what has happened behind and come out positively. You saw that with Mohammad Haris, who plays that way in the PSL, came out playing that way. You saw that with Iftikhar, with Nawaz, and with Shadab. You play positively, positive things happen to you. So I thought they deserved to win. I thought they played fantastic. It might, who knows, it's keeping them alive. It might have come too late in the tournament, but it's at least keeping them alive.
Very much alive. And Joy, I think the last ball of the innings sort of summed up Shadab's commitment to the game. He's already scored a blistering half-century. Yeah. He's got 2 wickets in the over. That's killed the game off. There's 38 to win of the last ball. And the ball goes over his head and he chases it and almost goes into the advertising, which are pretty hard, the advertising boundaries.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, as we were discussing, I think that was almost commitment to a level which was foolhardy, because had he done himself an injury with 38 runs to get, had he done himself an injury, he's clearly a star now for Pakistan. He's given them something. Their tails are up. The last thing they need is an injury. And somehow things have worked out for them. I mean, Mohammad Haris coming in thanks to injury. What's happening? The team has suddenly come together. They will really fancy their chances in their last match. Of course, all now depends on the fact that they need either India or South Africa to stumble. That's the only problem they have, that they need one of these 2 teams, and they will be looking back at that game in Zimbabwe and wondering, what could we have done on that day?
Yeah, and we've talked about...
There's one peculiar thing, though. Sorry, Gautam, there's one peculiar possibility that the Weather Bureau is forecasting against, which is if South Africa get 1 point in a rained off last game, they come to 6 points. which will put them level with Pakistan should they beat Bangladesh. But they're both playing at the same ground at the Adelaide Oval. But should the first game get rained off, the second happen, then South Africa finished with 6. Pakistan beat Bangladesh, they finished with 6. But because number of wins comes before net run rate, Pakistan would have had 3 wins. South Africa would have had 2 wins and 2 washouts. Pakistan will go through. But that's very, very unlikely to happen because the forecast for Adelaide is just getting better and better and better as you go along. And in fact, on the 6th, I think it promises to be a fairly warm day. But I just thought that given the misfortunes we've had with weather, we might as well put it there. I think it'll come down to just 2 results. It'll come down to will Pakistan beat Bangladesh or Bangladesh beat Pakistan, and will India beat Zimbabwe? I think it comes down to 1 result, really. Will India beat Zimbabwe?
And of course, I mean, if the weather does allow it, you expect South Africa to go over, to get it over the Netherlands. So once that happens, it's out of their hands, but they've done enough. They still have to do 1 more, which is to go ahead and beat Bangladesh. And if it's not going to be a net run rate scenario, maybe not necessarily convincing, but they have to win that game.
No, they have to win that game. And I think for Pakistan cricket at this stage in time, I mean, if you look at it that way, technically, Bangladesh has the same journey. Bangladesh goes and wins a big one against Pakistan, what happens then? And then if the same, rain, if it impacts the India match, what all happens from there on? So there are many ways in which you can skin this, but those are all unlikely scenarios. I think if the India-Zimbabwe match is held and India plays and India wins, the other thing this result has meant is that if India wins that Zimbabwe match, they will definitely be on top of the group, right?
They will.
No matter what,
they get 8
will
points.
definitely be on top of the group. And that means that they play the second place team on the other side, which at this point in time would be a toss-up between what, England and Australia? England and Australia, it should be. I mean, if New Zealand win the next match, yeah, of course.
Yeah. The thing with the semi-final is, should India top the table and should Australia hammer Afghanistan and England not beat Sri Lanka by the same amount, whatever semi-final Australia are in will be in Sydney.
Correct.
But if Australia do not qualify, the winner of that group will play in Sydney, the winner of the other group will play in Adelaide. So if everything goes to par, if England do qualify, Australia don't qualify, if things go as expected, and if India do beat Zimbabwe, then India play their semi-final in Adelaide, and the other one, New Zealand top their group, they'll play that one there. But we're maybe running ahead of the script a little bit.
Correct, yes. I mean, Australia was seeded in a sense from their group. So the Australia group winners would have played in Sydney. If Australia comes second, they still play in Sydney. If Australia don't qualify, you go back to scratch. So that's the way it stands right now. But yes, India, therefore, could play in either venue. They need Australia to be there if they play in Sydney. If Australia don't, India play at Adelaide, possibly against England. Then you might have South Africa against New Zealand in Sydney. That's the way things stand at the moment. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Quick word on South Africa. Finishing runners-up here, but obviously it was not all despondence from them because of everything that's happened earlier in the tournament. They're still very much alive, but the question is, Harsha, has it sort of damaged their confidence a little bit? As you said, they're the only team who were unbeaten till now.
It shouldn't. If anything, they have 1+ today, which is Temba Bavuma got runs. So if anything, it should actually, it depends on what you look for. You could look for the poor death bowling that allowed Pakistan to get away, or you could look at the positives and say, right, Temba Bavuma 36 of 19, and he played some good shots. He got inside the line, he hit over long leg, he hit on the offside, so Temba looked good. So you could say that in effect there was a positive for South Africa in here as well. The concern was the death bowling, because as the ball started to get a little wetter, they couldn't quite deliver the balls they wanted. We talked about Pakistan and South Africa earlier. I thought the difference between the two sides, among the many differences, was Pakistan were outstanding. I know they were bowling to lesser batsmen, but Pakistan were outstanding at the death. South Africa just struggled a little bit and conceded too many.
The other way you look at it, Joy, and we talk about this in tournament scenarios, is that when you have a tournament, no matter how long, and it's league stage followed by knockout stage, you don't mind having that one bad day. You don't want your bad day to be the semi or the final, and South Africa will say, could that be our bad day?
I think so. They definitely. The other thing that they would be looking at, and I think we haven't heard news at all, which just bothers me a bit, is on Miller. Because yes, he's missed a match. Klaasen was decent. He got 15 and 9 before getting out in difficult circumstances, shall we say. But given the situation we have, Miller is vital to that South African team because he brings 2 things to you. One is his ability with the bat, definitely. But also leadership qualities. I think, as you were talking about, whether it's with Barbados, Miller is a very different character in the last couple of years, and he's important for them to know Miller's coming in at 5 or 6 means they play the top order plays with a lot more freedom. And I think that is the one thing that they'll be sweating on. Is Miller going to be fit? Because Klaasen was okay. She's a fantastic batsman, but Miller coming back will give them something. And that is one news that we'll be all waiting for very carefully.
But Harsha, I'll come back to you on Babar Azam. At the start of the game, we were talking about advice to him on two fronts. One is, of course, as a leader. The other is as a batsman. He couldn't tick the batting box. But will this make enough of a difference as a leader given the victory?
You know, the word advice is making me feel about 25 feet tall. Yeah? Suggestion maybe, or what did we chat about? But interesting as well, Gautam, if you saw the way he batted, he's once again trying to play the big shots. What was Virat Kohli doing when he was searching for form in that string of misfortune? On some days, he was trying to play the big shots. It's almost as if you're saying, my game isn't working, let me do something different. But you're Virat Kohli, you're Babar Azam, you don't need to do. You back yourself and one day it will come right. But today you saw he was trying to play the big shots. So maybe it's getting to him a little bit, which is completely normal. So that was a matter of some concern. But you know, captaining that side in the field is about getting the angles and the field placement right, because you don't have to worry about the bowlers. That is such a good bowling side. And you've got 6 bowlers, you're carrying 23, 24 overs with you onto the ground. If you count 2 of Iftikhar, you're probably carrying 26 overs onto the ground with you, with 4 high-quality seamers. I mean, did you see that over from Mohammad Wasim? They didn't start with Mohammad Wasim. He's probably on par with Haris Rauf as their death bowler. So captaining is not an issue in the field for Babar Azam. He just needs to get his form back.
And of course, if you have a look at what he said after the game, very happy the way the team performed. We are not up to the mark, referring to himself and Rizwan. But however, the way Haris played, different players set the momentum, and the way Shadab finished the innings, outstanding. To be honest, everyone is my best player. Everyone is my match winner. First 2 losses cost us, but the way they have played the last 2 matches, as you know, cricket is a funny game. You never know. So I think he's got his spirits up, giving credit to the team and admitting that yes, him and Rizwan are still not at their best.
Also, it's a little bit about how you think about it. It's Pakistan's spirit of 92. Bad tournament, losing matches, losing by 10 wickets to the West Indies, to a Richie Richardson knock. And then you come back and you have this England match where you're knocked over for 70 odd. And
74.
74, and then it rains, it pours. Had that match been completed, Pakistan was out of the tournament. So
and happened in Adelaide, where they're finishing.
Yes.
That game, I think, was in Adelaide.
I think it was in Adelaide. So, they would look at it and they'd say that, I think we've given ourselves the best chance given what has already happened in the tournament. We've given ourselves a very, very good chance. And of course, now it's not in their hands. They have one duty, which is to beat Sri Lanka, but the rest of it is not in their hands. Sorry, Bangladesh. The rest of it is not in their hands.
Yep, we will be talking about Sri Lanka if they have a role to play in the other group, because it's going to be a critical game. We're going to come to that later. But overall, just to look, Harsha, at Babar Azam, I mean, he's brave words from him, but how much in a tournament scenario does a captain's form impact the rest of the team?
It shouldn't, because you should be able to separate your role as captain and your role as batsman. Babar was lead batsman. What is the lesson from today? Babar doesn't score, Rizwan doesn't score, you can make 185. I think they needed this to happen 4 or 5 months earlier. If this had happened 4 or 5 months earlier, that I know we can score 175, 180 without Babar and Rizwan, I think Pakistan would have entered this tournament differently. But the fact is, Babar and Rizwan were playing more than 50% of the deliveries in virtually every game. And so your 4, 5, 6 were not getting tested enough. Who knows? Maybe Haider Ali would have emerged as a better player if that had happened. Maybe there wouldn't have been the question marks over Iftikhar that have been dispelled so strongly. So if this had happened earlier, but at least they now know that even if those two get out, we have the batting to take us to 175, 180. And the moment we cross 160, we have the bowling to defend it most days. So that is a positive for Pakistan from this game. Now, the problem for them, though, is by the time they've discovered these positives, their future lies in a game they have no control over. But Gautam, Joy, you saw Pakistan play today. This side cannot lose to Zimbabwe. And how they managed to lose to Zimbabwe, I will never understand.
Yep, that's always been the case of it. They look back at that particular game. I mean, you can expect that everyone looks at an India-Pakistan battle, whichever side of the border you're on, and saying that, listen, that's our match, never mind the World Cup. for a lot of people, that is the truth. But Pakistan cannot look at it that way. They'll take the loss against India, but they will have to look at that Zimbabwe game.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, just one of those things they look at, and in tournaments like this, that's the problem. That when you discover form, you said, you just look at the group and you said, had this been one match later or one match before, and how things would have turned out. But that's what it is. It's not in their hands now. They've done their best. They're going to play. The good thing is they're going to play comparatively with an open mind in their last match, because there's not very much they can do about the rest of it. So they'll play openly.
Yeah. And NRR is not an issue.
Net run rate is not.
And NRR is not an issue.
Yeah.
NR won't be an issue because it just comes down to points.
Yeah.
That Pakistan get their 6, South Africa, do they go up to 7? You can't even look at the weather in Melbourne, because if the weather is bad, it doesn't matter. India's share points with Zimbabwe, they still get 7. That's good enough. So now the weather's not a factor. Net run rate is not a factor. It comes down, Joy, to good old-fashioned who wins goals.
Absolutely.
Yep, there you go. That's just a reminder of the points table there. India flying high on 6 points. No result gets them to 7, and a win gets them to 8. Only a defeat at the hands of Zimbabwe, the giant killers against Pakistan, keeps them at 6. Then Pakistan get to 6. South Africa get to 7 if they beat the Netherlands. That is the only scenario you can see a little reshuffle happening. But otherwise, no result or a win, the win, of course, being the most probable, is what takes India through to possibly a semi-final.
But Gautam, the irony of it all is that Zimbabwe has beaten you in the tournament. Yet every Pakistan fan will be supporting Zimbabwe for that last match.
How often does that happen?
The irony of it all.
Yep, that tends to happen pretty often. Just
to finish on that table, if India had beaten Bangladesh handsomely, I know that game became close against Pakistan, but if India had managed to beat Netherlands a little more strongly and had managed to beat Bangladesh a little more strongly, you could have actually been in a situation where India could have lost to Zimbabwe and qualified on net run rate, because they would have had 6 points. So they would have had 2 targets to play for on the last day, which is, doesn't matter if you lose, but if your net run rate goes above Pakistan, you can still go through. But that's not going to happen because Pakistan's net run rate is so much better.
But to be fair, you wouldn't want to set a target like that against any opposition.
No.
Definitely not Zimbabwe.
No.
With all due respect. Those famous last words.
No. Exactly.
Yeah. What India don't want is a rain-affected 6-7 over game. Then it becomes a bit of a lottery. Then Sikandar Raza connects a few, Madiveri connects a few, Sean Williams punches one here, and the game is over. So you don't want a 6-7 over kind of game.
Yep, fair enough. We already talked about this shorter format, bringing the teams together. And when you shorten the shorter format, it definitely brings teams even closer. But let's look ahead to what's coming up. A couple of critical fixtures in terms of the fate of the teams in the other group. Both matches are happening at the Adelaide Oval, and we're going to start with the Irish, and they are taking on New Zealand, whichever way you want to put it. New Zealand taking on Ireland. That's game number 1, the afternoon game from Group 1 in Adelaide. And the second game, of course, is going to be Australia against Zimbabwe. A tall order for them, but we'll focus one game at a time. New Zealand have played excellent cricket. They started the tournament with a bang. They sort of threw their cards on the table, Joy. Now they have to come back after just a little bit of a stutter. Bolt and Saudi didn't look invincible in the last game, and tell themselves, look, this is a game we should win. Let's win it well.
Yeah, this is a game they need to win now. And, the way they started this tournament, the aggression with which they started the tournament, what Finn gave them up front, I think that is where they need to go back to. And I think the big question again is, I think, the New Zealand camp. There's a lot of debate over Kane Williamson and how he's playing the game. Because if you look at it, for whatever it is, 40 or 40 balls, he possibly costs them the match. Because no matter what other acceleration you could do, if you're taking 1/3 of the balls of a team and you're delivering at a strike rate of 100, in a match where your strike rate needs to be at least about 140, then you're in trouble. And I think that New Zealand is a team that has traditionally been a very team-centric team, that no individual is bigger than the team. So I think Kane Williamson was the first to ask these questions to himself. But how do they solve it is a question that they need to come to. And what kind of a run rate is acceptable from Kane Williamson? And do they keep the same batting order? Look, Ireland is a kind of match they can take that. They can't take a chance against, but they can look at shuffling around with and seeing whether any other combination serves them better. I'll be really interested in seeing which New Zealand team turns up today.
23 of 23, 8 of 13 and 40 of 40. So not once in the tournament has he even exceeded 100 strike rate. And that, for someone of his class and the standards he sets, would not be acceptable.
Yeah, and I wonder that elbow's playing up again, but because I'm a fan of Williamson, I've been for a long time. But definitely, like South Africa wanted Temba Bavuma to do well today, I think New Zealand would want Williamson, even if he gets 30 of 18 balls, 30 of 19 balls, but unlock Williamson and get him going. If they can do that, that'll still be enough. Of course, if he can make a 50 of 35 balls, that would be the icing on the cake. But that is one issue for them, definitely. Also, I think a couple of others. Devin Conway got runs in that very first game, but they want a little bit more from Conway. Phillips has been bailing them out a little bit. Daryl Mitchell hasn't yet done as well as he did in the test matches in England and in the last T20 World Cup. And as a result, Neesham 6, Santner 7, it's starting to look a little thinner there. So they need a little bit more because Finn Allen is a bit, can go either way. He can either slam a quick 40 or go early. So that actually puts Williamson even more, puts his role even more starkly into focus.
The only advantage they have is they're playing 3 wicket keepers, all 3 of whom are in the lineup at the moment. Finn Allen, Devin Conway and Glenn Phillips. So in case at any point they needed to shuffle around and push in a Martin Guptill, they at least have the luxury to do so and just swap the gloves around.
Absolutely. The only problem is, who do you bring in Guptill for? Because at this point in time, Finn Allen, whatever it is, has shown you that he can give you that explosiveness up front. You have Glenn Phillips is a player of their tournament so far, okay, aside from their fast bowlers. So I think you look at it and say, okay, Daryl Mitchell perhaps is the one place that he's not there, because, or you question whether you want to put in Kane Williamson. And I don't think they're going to make a captaincy change at this stage in the tournament, no matter what the situation is. So I think that's one. Very interesting, I was just looking at it and saying that suppose they do go ahead and they decide to open with somebody, like put Conway at 3, allow Williamson to open and say, okay, free yourself, open, free yourself, get some runs, the field is back, field is in, that's your opportunity to do something. They have to change something because, unless he's unlocked, there's a large part of it. And the other thing I was thinking about, Harsha, is that, we talk about Williamson, the fact that every time we had this discussion about Williamson's T20, caliber, we talk about 2019 and 635. That was the year he did. But my point is that now if you look back at it, that is the aberration. He has never, after that, it's not that he's had a couple of bad series, but his strike rate post that has never been more than 115, 120, that too in extremely helpful conditions in places like the UAE.
The one time you saw that reappear was
semi-final
in last year's final.
Final.
Semi-final. No, last year's final, I think, when he got an 85 or 48 balls or so. Yeah. But opening may not be such a bad idea. Again, open with Williamson, get into time the ball, hit the gaps, because every time you hit a gap, you get 4. It may not be such a bad idea because Devin Conway is a fairly flexible batsman. So, look, irrespective of what happens, I mean, you expect Zimbabwe to beat Ireland, but we're going to have another very peculiar situation where you're going to have sort of geographies with past histories. Remember, we talked about Pakistan hoping Bangladesh does well. We talked about Pakistan hoping India does well. Now England hoping Ireland do well. Now, I don't know which of the islands, I'm not very familiar with the geography there, but England want Ireland to do well because Ireland knock out New Zealand. And then what does the point table look like? Because Ireland get to 5, New Zealand are 5. Then it just comes down to whether England or Australia win their games.
Correct. That's exactly what it comes down to. Yeah, it's just worth pausing and look at the points table at this stage because assuming things go to par, New Zealand win, go to 7. England win on the following day against Sri Lanka, they go to 7. Australia win, they go to 7. But their net run rate, they need a victory by a huge margin. And their match against the Irish is what they'll look back on and saying that they had them 6 down for 60 and they couldn't finish that game off. Yeah,
so actually, England will be hoping that Ireland win, but even more than England, I think it's Australia who will be looking at it and saying, because England will be saying, if they win, all England needs to do is win their last match and it will be an almost impossible run rate for Australia to make up. I think Australia will be looking really hard and hoping for something to happen. And anyway, the Trans-Tasman rivalry, it's not exactly the friendliest rivalry on the planet. So I think they'll be really hoping that Ireland pushes something out.
None of these rivalries mean anything when it comes to supporting a team to suit your own cause. And that's what tends to happen in these World Cup scenarios. But before we move on to the other critical fixture, quick look at the Irish and see if they need to do anything different. One person who's played a huge role for them in the lead-up matches, particularly when they play other associate nations, is Simi Singh. You always see him as part of the lineup. He hasn't managed to quite get a game here. I guess that's because, Harsha, the rest of the guys have been doing the job.
Are you talking about Simi Singh?
Yep.
Yeah, Simi Singh. But I noticed the other day in one of the matches, George Dockrell came back and bowled 4 overs. He'd almost started to give up his bowling to become a sort of big hitting finisher. But if he can give those 4 overs, look, they've got Mark Adair, Josh Little, Barry McCarthy is expensive sometimes, but he comes back. Curtis Camphor can bowl a little bit. So they've got decent bowling. And Camphor, I think Camphor had one great game. That was in stage 1. Yeah. But otherwise, I don't see them needing to make too many changes. Balbirnie's had one very good game. Sterling is always a very good player. Lachlan Tucker had that lovely game. Tector's a big hitter. So there's not a lot that they can change. I think they'll go in with that side. But remember, Ireland now are dangerous because they have nothing to lose on what is forecast to be a very good day, on a very good batting surface, short square boundaries. Suddenly Sterling goes boom, boom, boom. And you're thinking, oops. Because the ball is not swinging very much. I don't know that morning. It's a morning game. That, if I remember, I think it's an afternoon game. It's an afternoon game tomorrow. So then I thought morning it might swing a little bit, but it's an afternoon game.
Yep.
Morning game is on the 6th. There's a 10:30 start on the 6th.
Yes. So if it's not a morning game, Bolton Saudi still need to somehow bring out their A game. Forget what happened in their previous fixture and put them across the Irish. But the big fixture after that, the home side, will come out in the evening to what is likely to be a packed Adelaide Oval against Afghanistan, who of course can be the most unpredictable, the most dangerous side going. Not the kind of team, Joy, you'd probably want to play in a fixture where you need to do more than just win.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't, that's a big problem. The mountain that Australia has to climb in terms of run rate is very big, and therefore the danger is to try and think about run rate before you think about winning. And I think the first thing they need to do to give themselves the best possible chance is let's secure the win. And I think that's a tricky thing. I think it puts Australia in a strange position because what is the best, if you have to make up run rate...
Joy, can you do that? Because you'll already have New Zealand's game finished. Yeah. New Zealand will have finished and gone ahead. If they've upset, it's a different matter altogether. Yeah. They need the win and they need the net run rate.
Yeah, they do. But my point is that if New Zealand has played, New Zealand's run rate is beyond anything you can do. All you can do is try and hope to cross England enough to be able to get somewhere. Because New Zealand is out of it. If New Zealand wins this game, they're just far, far ahead. So where does that leave you? That leaves you with basically saying that how do I catch up England? And then the things come, the best way to make up run rate is basically to bowl them out for 60, 70 and try and knock it off in 6 overs, which is what happened to them effectively. They had the reverse, they lost by 100 runs, but that's what I'm saying. That's the only hope they have. They'd want to go in, bowl first and do something and say that, for whatever it is worth, Afghanistan still has a decent bowling side, especially the spinners, but their batting can be a little suspect at times. If we get Cricbuzz out early, Zaza is not there, can we just put the cat among the pigeons, finish it off, a couple of thunderous Yorkers. So those are the kind of things they'll be looking at, saying that if we get an opportunity, suppose we win the toss, what do we do?
Yep, and I think also, Harsha, the numbers don't stack up in their favour. They need to win not by 50 runs. They need to win by 50 more runs than England's victory if it's by runs in order to get through. So you do the maths on that one. It's actually multiplication, not addition anymore. And the other thing is just support Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Look, if Australia win by, say, 80 against Zim, which is not unlikely. They go first, bat first, make 200 bowl, not Zim. Afghanistan bowl them out for 100, 110. They get that 80, 90 run difference and then hope that Sri Lanka really run England close. So that is the way forward for Australia. But remember, you talk about barbies in Australia. Currently, the word that's prevailing there is hammies.
Yeah.
They've got a few hammies. I think Aaron Finch is a 70-30 starter, he said. I wonder if there are any cruel people out there who say, okay, Finchy, if it's 70-30, hang on, let's get Cameron Green to open the batting and maybe we'll get a really explosive opener to go along with David Warner. I think Tim David has a dodgy hammy. I don't know what the third hammy is. I don't think it's Mitch Marsh because he has a dodgy most things. I don't know if it's Stoinis. But the thing with Australia is Joy, I expected Australia to be the explosive team of the tournament. Just given the way they were stacking up, I thought Australia will be the explosive team of the tournament. They've been a bit, I've searched for the right word, they've been a bit tepid. They've been lukewarm.
Absolutely.
Even with the bowling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, can you imagine 25 for 5? You made 160 odd, you got them 25 for 5. You have the chance of winning 80, 90, 100 runs. And then suddenly they allowed the opposition to get to 130, 140. That was the Ireland game, I think.
And just one player.
They suddenly allowed them to get there. Yeah, those 40 runs, those 30, 40 runs, and there's Mitch Starc bowling, he's conceding 18 in 1 over. They were tepid. I didn't see that Australia saying, hey, how can you beat us? We are Australia. So in many ways, whether with bat or with ball, they've been a little lukewarm.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully said, Lorcan Tucker taking that many runs off the likes of, Starc and Hazelwood is something. But that's exactly what we were discussing in the studio as well, Harsha, that once Australia, the Australia of the 90s or 2000s, once they had their foot on your throat, they didn't allow you to get up. And I think here from, 25 for 5, 67 for 6, for them to reach 130, 40 odd is something that Australia of your, you could never have imagined it. They would have been, and the other thing, there being no public reaction to it. People saying, okay, fine, it was a good match, they reached some. They would have been chaos in the papers. They would have said, how did you allow these guys to get up and go so far? So I think Australia is a kinder side, a gentler side, perhaps a more thoughtful side, an introspective side, but that's not the Australian character that won them so many World Cups. And that's all I have to say about that.
Harsha, my first trip to an Australian zoo, I learned a lesson when I saw an emu. Of course, you see the kangaroos and the koalas and the wallabies and everything, but I saw the emu, and the person who was guiding us said, since he knew I was from the world of cricket, he said, the emu is on the Australian cricket board symbol. Do you know why? Because the emu can't walk backwards, and hence the emu doesn't take a backward step. It seems they took a few backward steps against Ireland.
No, absolutely. I fully agree. And I think that's the thing that they'll be looking at as a team. Look, their record is still great. We're talking about, world champions. They are the defending world champions. But this is not a tournament. Tepid is one word. The other word I'd use is timid, which is not a word that you use very often for Australians. But that performance against New Zealand on day one was timid. They just couldn't get going in any way.
Well, let's just hope timid David.
Can you imagine if you were playing Wordle?
Tim David, not timid.
Can you imagine if you were playing Wordle and you got T and ID? You could go timid or tepid and.
Yeah, but you also cannot use the words timid or tepid when it comes to Afghanistan cricket. They could lose a game. They could lose a game by many runs, but they'll never come out looking or feeling timid or tepid. And that's the kind of opposition Australia are up against. No Hazratullah Zazai, yes, they'll miss out on that. But otherwise, the spin twins or the spin trio, if you include Nabi in that, always a factor to reckon with, Joy.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just been a bit disappointed by Mohammad Nabi, given the fact that, he plays so much Big Bash cricket. I expected more out of him. And given the fact that they've lost Zazai, I expected him to bat a bit up the order as well. And that hasn't really happened. And I think both in the CPL and in other places, he bats slightly further up and does a little bit more with the bat. He hasn't given them that.
Ironically, even at times when he doesn't bat too high up, because the Jamaica team that he played for this season, who were the champions, they had the team packed with big hitters up the order. And he batted at times at 7 and 8, but he came up with innings of like 30 of 10 balls.
He just doesn't seem to have done that. And that's the one, because especially if you're missing a player like Zazai up the order, you need somebody to pick it up. And obviously the other is that Ibrahim Zadran has just not shown the kind of form that you expect out of him. He's the one player that they really rate as somebody who will play a long time for them. And he's just not given them enough.
But Harsha, given the fact that the Afghanistan game will be looked at more in context of what Australia can do to them, and Afghanistan will be well aware of that, how do they come out? How do they approach it?
I don't know how Afghanistan look at it, because they don't have a future in this tournament. They did really well to qualify in the top 8, but in this tournament now, they don't have a future. So I wonder if they'll just say, look, there's nothing to lose, and beware always the team that has nothing to lose, because Afghanistan has nothing to lose. Let's go firing. I expect all the attention, focus to be on Australia. So, suddenly Afghanistan might slip through. My fear for Afghanistan is I still don't think they have enough batting, because the other day they played Gulbuddin Naib back into the side straight away, and he was slotted at 4. I expected a little bit more from Najib Zadran, but Asian sides that do well, you suddenly come up on bouncy tracks, and it asks a lot of questions of you. Even Gurbaz has not been quite the player so far that we thought he would be. And that is why if Australia come hard and say we're bowling like it's the first morning of a test match, and Cummins is going to come and bowl hard, not worry about Dibley slower ones. You're Pat Cummins. You come in and bowl quick like Anrik Nokia. If they all come in and decide to bowl quick, they might just get through that Zimbabwe lineup because there's Usman Ghani, Ibrahim Zadran, Gulbadin Naib, Najib Zadran. There isn't one batsman who can say, right, I don't mind the pace, I don't mind the bounce, I'll be there. So I think that presents an opportunity for Australia if they can really come hard and play like it's the first morning of a test match.
Yep. Just in terms of Afghanistan, we talk about the batsmen, we talk about all the batsmen that they will come at. But Joy, just to finish off on the entire Australia-Afghanistan, if the focus is going to be so much on that, they will know the result of New Zealand, Ireland. They will know that England are coming up next in Sydney, and it's England-Sri Lanka after all. It's not going to be a situation where you're playing a minnow team. Yes, Sri Lanka may have come through the qualifiers, but they are still Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I mean, look, once New Zealand win, you forget about the New Zealand result. There's nothing else on run rate that you can do about that. You just have the England result in mind. You have the England run rate in head and say, how much of a task can I give England in the last day? And that's all you ask yourself. Because I think the moment New Zealand wins, that part of it is over. The run rate is just, there's too much of a differential in the run rate. And I think that is what you need to look at. And that's the way they will be looking at it. I agree. This one Afghan team is vulnerable. They can be blown away, but they need to be blown away by intent. And of course, I really feel, again, it could be the day that, you bring in Cam Green, it's a full-fledged attack, things happen, he blasts you 60 up front in 30-odd balls, anything could happen. And I think we just saw one match where suddenly fortunes turned. It may be too late. Let's see if that's the day Australia shows that they're not timid.
Well, Harsha?
There's no rain in Sydney, is there? There's no rain in Sydney, is there?
Well,
Can you imagine England going out because their game is washed out?
Oh.
As it is, rain took away points against Ireland when Moeen Ali was batting, hitting the ball where he wanted to. He was 2 hits away, 1 hit away from taking them through. I hope it doesn't rain in Sydney. Just as I hope it... Melbourne, India's game doesn't matter, but England, I hope it doesn't rain. You don't want rain to decide qualification.
You certainly don't. And as far as this tournament is concerned, Australia are going to be on the spot or under the spotlight. So are New Zealand. When England play in Sydney, they will. But because we're here on Cricbuzz Live and we've enjoyed Harsha's company for the entire tournament, we thought it's time to put him on the spot. Harsha, I've got 3 questions for you.
Why? I thought I hit my straps.
Because you hit your straps, we've decided to put you in the hot seat. And I've got 3 questions for you related to this tournament.
Oh dear.
What in this tournament could you watch on a loop?
On a loop? Look, I think if you ask me questions about this tournament, I suspect all my answers are going to be the same. I would watch on a loop, maybe on silent. I would watch Virat Kohli's last 8 balls, or maybe that last over. I'd watch it on silent, but I'm not very good listening to myself. But I'd watch it on maybe that one. I'll tell you what, I might watch the end of Zimbabwe versus Pakistan as well. I thought Pommy was excellent calling that last game as well. So Zimbabwe versus Pakistan, maybe one of those.
I was wondering where Harsha was going when he said, watch it on mute, and I realized. All right. Question number 2, game of the tournament so far.
One of those two that I talked about. Either Zimbabwe versus Pakistan, because it was such a thriller. And you suddenly saw Ngarawa and Muzarabani just go to another level. Brad Evans coming and delivering that over. It was really overs number 18 and 19 by Ngarawa and Muzarabani. And just the sheer implausibility of it all. So I would maybe look at Zimbabwe versus Pakistan, because I wasn't watching that match too closely. I only watched it in bits. But how do you get over the drama of India versus Pakistan? I think that game will go down as a game for the ages, not just as a game for this tournament, but as a game for the ages, because of all the emotion and the drama and everything that it encompassed.
Yep, certainly that's something we expect. And you can't just tell yourself that, listen, I'm going to ask for a moment other than that, because that has been really the moment, the match, everything of this tournament so far. And well, if you were privileged to be there, it just gave you that extra 20%. Finally, Harsha, The takeaway, your takeaway from the 2022 World Cup. I know it's not done and dusted yet. There could be still another big moment coming up, especially in terms of who actually lifts the trophy. But there's still been enough of the tournament as we've approached it so far.
And I'll throw it back to you because all of you have watched this tournament very closely. I know rain has been a factor, but just imagine if there was no rain, fresh-ish tracks, you're getting 150, 160 games, but the bowlers are in the game and you've got long boundaries. People are getting caught of 80-meter hits. You want to hit a six, you want to hit a 90-meter six. See how many 100-meter sixes there are. I've enjoyed watching it on good wickets and on large boundaries. So to me, the big takeaway is, yes, T20 is alive. T20 has more ebbs and flows than you thought there are. T20 has a far bigger role for the attacking player than we thought there is, but provide sporting tracks and provide large boundaries. Just before I came here, I saw a game in Indore. And I mean, I know Indore is a fabulous cricket-loving city, but the boundary was so close. We talk about 25, 26 boundaries, 27 boundaries in a game. In Australia, it's 16, 17 boundaries. So suddenly your fitness is coming in. You're running threes. Do you remember threes existed? Remember threes, Joy? T20 cricket? So suddenly threes have come back. Twos, we started counting twos. So twos and threes have come back. So I've enjoyed that more than anything else. I've enjoyed sporting tracks, and I think all T20 should be played with large boundaries.
Yep, fair enough. And I think the one other factor I'd just like to add to what Harsha said, it's taken out the coin from the game or the fortunes of the coin. You don't see, okay, who's won the
Absolutely.
toss? Oh, there you go. So,
I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, Gautam. We get our pre-match stats, right? You get pre-match stats from Deepo and the others as well. We get our pre-match stats. And inevitably, you look at pre-match stats and you say, okay, how many matches won batting first? How many matches won batting second? And you say, yeah, win the toss again. And suddenly here you're saying, no, doesn't matter because the tracks are true and you can bat first, set a target. There's a lot more matches being won batting first. So I'm glad you brought that up too. Yeah, the toss is not such a big factor as it should never be.
the only uncertainty, not of the tournament, but of our show, is the question that was posed by Joy. And I know a lot of you would have picked that up. The question is, who got it first? A reminder and the answer, Joy.
Okay, here's the question, and who played there first? And again, that's grammatically not great, but there's a reason for it, and scored an international football match. So playing a cricket match and playing a football match, and this person was less than 17 years old, and of course, it's a great Elise Perry. I mean, one of the greatest, forget about cricket, one of the greatest athletes of our generation. I think the last person who is that kind of athlete, I mean, Ashley Bartley is great, but she's played a BBL. This is a person who's played elite level football, elite level cricket. Maybe Babe Didrikson was, a golfer, a tennis player, an athlete, a javelin thrower. I think she's the last sort of multi-dimensional athlete that you've seen of this quality. I mean, Elise Perry is a great. And, if they choose to have a family, her husband Matthew plays for Australia in rugby. So it'll be a 3 international family with 2 members. It's unbelievable. I mean, there's a rugby jersey, a cricket jersey, and there's a football jersey. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's her birthday today as well.
Oh, well, spot on. I mean, there you go.
No wonder there's got to be a connect. Whenever Joy sets a question, there's got to be a daily connect there. I shared a studio with Elise Perry once. I think might have been the 2015 World Cup. We were in a studio in Fox Sports with Elise Perry, and at that time she was at the height of her career. Now I think she's just tapering off. But what odds that child will be a swimmer?
Given Australia's record.
Quite possible. But we'd probably say you could...
What was the last one, Joy? Wasn't there the last double international that we know of, Asif Karim?
Asif Karim, Kenya,
Davis Cup tennis and cricket.
They played Davis Cup tennis?
Yes, tennis and cricket.
Yeah. But we had an all-black from New Zealand.
Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson
was also there.
You gave away answer to Joy's favorite quiz question.
Jeff Wilson, in fact, played in the first ever T20 international. The one
where everyone dressed up.
Yeah, they dressed up. That Australia-New Zealand won in 2005. He played that match.
Just in case you're wondering, this is what happens when the three of us get together. We were supposed to have finished the show a few minutes ago, but I'm sure you like a little bit of this. And some of you waiting with bated breath, wondering who got Elise Perry first. The answer, that is. And here it is. Sabarish G.
Oh, that's 2 in a row, I think.
Yeah, it probably would be. There was definitely one this week. So, well done, Sabarish. And picking that one up, yes, indeed, Elise Perry, who was also the player of the match in a World Cup final at the Kensington Oval in Barbados in the 2010 T20 World Cup, which interestingly was the only time they played it in reverse. The men's match finished first, then came the women's game.
Fascinating. That I didn't know. That I definitely did.
I hope she comes to the. I hope she's got enough cricket left in her to come to the first women's IPL. It'll be very good if she comes to the first women's IPL.
Yep.
Even if it's just for one season, if you have Mithali, Jhulan, Elise Perry, all these greats playing the inaugural season, would be good.
Yeah, certainly would be a good way to start and finish that. That's all we have on the show. Wonderful to always be in the company of Harsha Bhogle and Joy Bhattacharya. Thank you, gentlemen. We look forward to some more knockout fixtures coming our way. Australia, Zimbabwe, New Zealand, Ireland, England and Sri Lanka. That's all to follow, all before India's group gets back into action again. For now, from Cricbuzz Live, that's all we have.